A few weeks back, we were invited to a Nintendo press event where, along with getting some hands-on time with some of the new games that were going to be coming out around the holiday season, we also got some hands-on time with the NES Classic Edition. Now, for those of you who don't know what this is, it's basically a miniaturized reprint of the classic system from the early 80s that a lot of folks grew up with playing the classic games, Super Mario Brothers, as you can see, Metroid, Pac-Man, Legend of Zelda, all these great games. And after I had some hands-on time with this at this press event, I took a couple of the reps from Nintendo aside and I said, listen guys, please tell me you're going to make a ton of these for the holiday season because this is going to be the biggest seller, I think, of any of the consoles out, just because, number one, yes, it has great games, it's small, it's reasonably priced, but the nostalgic element for a lot of us that grew up playing these games is going to be incredible. And sure enough, here we are, holiday season, and they are in very short supply. We are very fortunate and thankful that Nintendo gave us one to review and talk about, but these have become really hard to get a hold of, and if you're having a hard time getting a hold of one, make sure you keep on checking on Amazon, at your local Best Buy, GameStop, to see if you can get a hold of one for yourself, because I promise you it is worth it. So we're going to be unboxing this system, and we're going to be talking about its features, what it does, what it doesn't do, and addressing some of the criticism that I think is kind of unwarranted, and I think when we get to that, you'll see what I mean. But first, let's start taking this apart. First of all, you gotta love the packaging. I mean, it just harkens back to the original console itself. The same design cues of the packaging as you see on the console itself. Really cool small box. It shows you a bunch of the games on the back. It lists all the games you're going to get. There are 30 games in all that are built into this console, and unlike the original console back in the day, it doesn't take cartridges. All the games are actually embedded on a chip inside the unit itself. So you don't have to worry about swapping cartridges. You are going to miss out on that little cartridge slot on here, but otherwise you are going to be playing a perfect replica, a tiny NES Classic. So we have a little slide opening on the side here. Let's get that open without cutting my hand open. Okay, let's see what we have here. And we are going to slide this bad boy out. Oh, look at this. And I got to tell you, any Nintendo console I've ever unboxed, whether it's the Wii U, the Wii, the 3DS, oh, the Nintendo 64, the list goes on and on. I just love how they always do the packaging with the manuals. Nintendo always has the best manuals, usually the first thing you see on any console that they put out, which is great because a lot of the time, you kind of need to take a look at this. I mean, we're kind of veterans here when it comes to unboxing tech, but it's always good to check out the documentation. Here we go, that's the first thing we see on top. And by the way, guys, this little thing right here, this is actually the console. That is the tiny little NES Classic Edition. We'll get to that in a second. Let's open up this half first. Let's see what we get. And, oh, look at this. It is, oh, I love this. This is the best. This is actually the controller. Let's move this back for a second. This is the controller that comes with it. This is what we grew up playing on, folks. This is a classic NES Classic controller. You'll see the D-pad, the select and start buttons, and a simple A and B. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love my Xbox controllers, I love my PlayStation controllers, but there's something to be said for the simplicity of a gamepad that doesn't really offer too many options. It's hard to mess up the input because, well, you don't have that much, do you? You have the A and the B, start and select, and you have this four-way pad here, which is just great. Let's take this off. Gotta unscrew it here. A lot of work to do, but, you know, kind of part of the fun, part of the excitement building up to getting to play with your games. Okay, and you'll see that it actually has, look at that, the old connector here that you can see that is going to go into the console. Now, let's address an issue that people have been talking about, which is the length of the controller cable. As you can see, it is a short cable, and people have been complaining, well, the cable is way too short on the controller, but I need to tell you something. This console was designed to sit right next to you when you're gaming. Okay, this was not designed to be placed in your stereo system cabinet, your entertainment center. This console was made to actually sit next to you while you're gaming because the way you change games is by hitting a button on the console itself. So really, having a short cable for the controller is not a big deal because the console is meant to be right next to you. So we'll get to the other issues in a minute, but they're not really issues. But if you're worried about the length of a cable, you should probably worry about the HDMI or the power cable, but the length of the controller cable, not an issue at all because the system should be right next to you while you're playing. Okay, enough of that. Let's move forward. Get this back in here, and oh, here we go. As you can see, we have a wall plug for the power adapter here. And look, it's a USB wall plug. So it makes me wonder if we can actually plug it in. See, the back of my stereo receiver actually has USB, and I wonder if I could power it with that and not use the plug. I'll have to try that in another video, but there you go, the AC wall plug. And, well, you know what's next? You know what's next? The console itself. But let's wait a minute. Let's see what else is in here, because the console is going to be the big reveal, so let's see what else comes in the box. Now, look at that. Okay, first we have the actual USB cable that's going to plug into the system and then go into the wall plug. That is right here. Then we have an HDMI cable. Now, why do we have an HDMI cable? Because, folks, although it is a redo of a classic system, there is still modern technology built in. It actually connects by HDMI to your television or to your receiver, which is great, because that means you can see the beautiful graphics. Now, yes, it still is going to be 8-bit classic graphics look, but the quality of the screen, the quality of the picture is going to be pristine and beautiful thanks to the HDMI. And if you'll notice, let's open this here, because this is going to end up being more important than the controller cable. If you'll notice, they actually give you a decent length HDMI cable. Now, the HDMI cable, it's good that it's this length, because this is what you're going to have to connect to your television or to your receiver, and then to the other end of the console, and they give you a decent bit of distance here. So, as we said earlier, the short controller cable, not an issue. They give you a decent length HDMI cable, which is really what's important, because, again, the console is going to be right next to you. So, that takes care of that issue. Now, let's move all this to the side. Lots of plastic, lots of twisties. And let's take a look at the... You really have to be able to have this in your hand to appreciate it. This thing is so light. I feel like I have a tiny coaster in my hand. This is the whole shebang. This is the entire console. As you can see, the design ethic, it's a perfect reproduction of the old school version with a couple of twists. The first one being that, of course, there is no cartridge. There are no cartridges used for the games. As I said earlier, all the games are built into a chip that is right inside the system, built into the system. But you see you have the power and reset buttons right in the front. You also, even though they only included one controller, there is another input for a second controller if you're gaming with a friend. So I know there are also some third-party companies that are making, I think, wireless controllers for this now. As of yet, I don't think Nintendo has announced or made one, but they are available if you want. If you look at the back of the system, you'll see the DC in, which is actually a micro USB input, if you can see that right there. And you'll see the HDMI input so that you can connect it to your television or your entertainment center receiver. One thing I wanted to talk about was the games and the way they work. The reason I said that you're supposed to keep the console next to you is when you want to change the games, and as I told you earlier, there are 30 built-in games. When you want to change games or back out of a current game and go to a different one, you actually have to hit the reset button on the console itself. This is why I said earlier it should be right next to you, because anytime you want to change a game, you actually have to physically press a button on the console. Another great thing they built into the console was the ability to save your games anytime you want. And if you're an old school gamer, you know what a big deal this is. I'm sure all of us have had long gaming sessions where we lost a whole bunch of gameplay because we couldn't save it at the right place or at the right time. Well, now that is a thing of the past. We can just hit the reset button again and it brings up a menu. Each of the 30 games that are included in here have 4 game slots to save the game multiple times. It's really a great addition and hugely appreciated by those of us who remember losing gameplay all those years ago. So here you have it, the Nintendo Classic Edition, around $60. If you can find it this holiday season, we couldn't recommend it more.